how big of a fan of Destiny are you? I want people to know.
Well, I have 5,000 hours in it, and I usually enjoy playing it. There more days than not, I have enjoyed actually playing it. I don't join in voice channels with my friends and go, "This game fucking sucks. Let's play something." I go, "Hey, you want to run something?" And we jump on and we do it, and we have fun doing it. There are problems along the way, sure, because it's Destiny and it's a video game, and all video games have problems. And there are things I don't like about it, obviously, but I choose to boot up the game and I choose to keep buying the expansions because I enjoy playing it.
For me personally, I played a hell of a lot of Destiny early on when this would have been 2016 to like 2018. I put about 500 hours into Destiny 2 because I had a lot of friends who played it, and so I would get on and play it with friends. I never really thought about it critically like I do with a lot of games, because when I'm playing with friends, I'm not thinking about a game critically most of the time. Like I do, offhand complaining as I do, but I never really had any actual critical thoughts about Destiny until I played it one day alone and realized that I didn't like a single thing about the game. And then I decided I was going to quit. And that was around the time that the Halo MCC came out, which I believe was 2018, 2019 on PC.
Maybe something like that.
And then the only time I really revisited Destiny would have been to do Red War for Cass. And back then, that was when Cass was specifically only games I really didn't like. And so Red War was just a punching bag. That's all I wanted to do, was punch that campaign because it was so bad. And then eventually Cass sort of evolved into me playing other games that I did like a little bit better. And I think that's where people got their wires crossed about how I felt about Destiny. And I think luckily the content I was covering for Destiny, people had similar thoughts or didn't realize Witch Queen was as negative as it was. But then Lightfall was really bad, and people like the final shape, and they didn't agree with my opinions and don't seem to understand them. This is the first real thoughts I'm doing after a video has come out and after people have commented on the video. And what I'm struck by is that a lot of people think I'm just complaining for no reason. They think I'm just complaining to complain, or they're dismissing my opinions as not genuine because I just want to be negative. And I want to... This is the first real thoughts I've done in a while, because I want people to understand that it's not because I'm just complaining to complain. I criticize things because I want them to be better, and I even criticize things that I love because nothing is above criticism. And with Destiny, I think it just finally happened to be that a lot of people happen to like this DLC, and as a knee-jerk reaction feel very strongly when someone isn't positive about it and just want to dismiss that as they're wrong and their opinion is invalid, when it's important to understand people's opinions and disagree with them. You can still disagree with me on whether or not the final shape is a good DLC, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from, and I have Scoop here as a big Destiny fan to help understand where he comes from on why we don't like the final well, I say we. I'm assuming you don't like the final shape. You probably like it a little bit more than me, especially because you engage with the content coming after it and not just the campaign. But this is not going to try and attempt to convince you that my opinion is right and yours is wrong. I just want people to understand my opinion and not dismiss it as, oh, it doesn't matter, or you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I promise. Especially a lot of people were saying that, like, oh, you only check in every year to do the expansions, and you don't know anything about the game. And that's not true as well. Like, I do keep up with some of the plot. And there was even a point where somebody was talking about my criticisms about the Ahamkara, the Wish Ahamkara, and the consequences were not legitimate because I had missed part of a seasonal story about reviving Riven, getting a wish from her to get into the Traveler or whatever. And I want to be clear that I did actually go and look up that information, and I reviewed it, and I still don't think that I'm wrong in what I said, because the game specifically during the events of Final Shape references the consequences of wishing upon an Ahamkara multiple times, including Crow telling Cade that the consequences were just something they were going to have to live with because they didn't have another choice to be able to get into the Traveler, and they had to do it. So obviously Bungie wants you to know that these consequences are still a potential threat, and they're not just fine that we did this. So the fact that the consequences for the wish don't come up within the course of the campaign is a criticism I have, and that's a criticism of Destiny lore in general, where a lot of campaigns will set things up and then you don't see the consequences for like 6 months or a year or whatever. And that actually is a problem with the beginning of Final Shape, is because of the way that they paced the lead up to the Witness. The most important parts of the Final Shape happen in the Lightfall campaign and between. So the Veil opening up a portal and wishing upon an Ahamkara happen during Lightfall and after. And so when you start the Final Shape, you're just given a recap of that information, where if they had been smarter about it, that should have been the beginning of the Final Shape, where you find out about the Veil, it opens up a portal, you find out you can't go in, then you wish upon the Ahamkara to go in, and those are the first couple of missions to sort of set up the stakes. But as it is, the Final Shape begins with the consequences from earlier. And I get that it's an ongoing story, and that's part of for people who are constantly playing, but I just don't think that's really good pacing, especially because this happens over the course of a year.
Those seasons, they're told a week at a time, with one little mission a week at a time. It's not a very engaging formula, and that's why they're changing it this year.
And from what I understand, after the season is over, you don't have access to that information besides like a thing in a menu?
After the next expansion comes out, seasonal content gets vaulted with the launch of the next expansion.
Okay, so it's up until the Final Shape you could have done that.
Yeah.
But you can't go back and do that.
But if you didn't like Destiny because Lightfall turned you off of it so much, you're kind of screwed out of getting that experience prior to playing the Final Shape.
Yeah, with the Witch Queen, I felt like obviously there's the most important information of you beat Savathun prior to the events of Witch Queen, but I felt like Witch Queen was very self-contained, where the Final Shape was not. And I understand that sort of also because this is the culmination of all of Destiny lore up until that point. The Final Shape couldn't really have been as self-contained as Witch Queen was, but it definitely feels like they could have made it more self-contained instead of stretching the plot out. But I think pretty much that was the criticism of Lightfall in general, was that they should have just gone straight into the Final Shape, and they decided to make another expansion in between that didn't really make sense and didn't really progress the plot forwards all that much.
Yeah, because when they announced the Final Shape years back after Shadowkeep, Lightfall was the final DLC, and the Final Shape was added onto it. I don't remember exactly when, but I think it was sometime between Witch Queen and Beyond Light.
And the other problem I have with the Final Shape is the plot is really uninteresting. And when I say plot, I mean that separately from writing, which is, I know, a bit odd, but when I mean plot, I mean the overarching events of the campaign, whereas writing would be individual scenes. So for example, to use another example, I don't like the plot of Halo Infinite very much, but I think the writing is very strong for individual scenes, and it's some of the best writing that Halo has had ever.
Probably the best.
It's just the overarching plot was not very good, and it doesn't really go anywhere. So with the Final Shape, I thought the plot was extremely weak. It's very paint by numbers, typical Destiny campaign where there's a big bad who wants to end the world or the universe or whatever, and you go and stop him. And for the most part, the interactions you have with the big bad are relegated to them monologuing at you. And I don't mean to you when I say at you. I mean they could be monologuing to anybody. They don't have any personal connection to you as a character, which is a shame because I really liked the plots of The Witch Queen and Forsaken because your character has a more personal connection. You take the initiative to go and fight Uldren and his goons in Forsaken after Kate is killed. In The Witch Queen, Savathun tricks you and has a grudge against you specifically because you were the one who killed her. With the Final Shape, everybody's fighting the Witness, and the Witness doesn't care about you specifically at all. You are just a guardian. You are not important anymore to the plot. And for some people, that's fine, because then you can sort of fill in your own story, I guess. But I would much rather have had it that the Witness had some sort of personal connection to us and would have wanted to mess with us more specifically. Some of the things I had thought of in my head were maybe twisting around memories of things we had done as our character. And that would be like the witness showing you false information to try and trick you into misremembering things or that sort of thing. And then for the other characters, instead of trying to woo them with their like perfect world or whatever, because that was sort of the witness's big thing, is the witness is trying to show everyone the things that they want to sort of trick them into giving up and accepting the final shape. I think it would have been more interesting and maybe even more thematically appropriate if the witness was torturing people with their own personal hells and showing that physicalized in level design. And this is especially after having played Control, where there's a lot of weird level design in that, or I was thinking about like the Far Cry 3 drug trip, where there's like weird things, like all of a sudden you're like walking forwards and then all of a sudden you're walking straight up and the level's morphing around you and things like that. Because the Traveler is supposed to be this all-powerful bad guy, and you're inside of the Witness.
You mix those around.
Where all of the stuff being displayed is not even technically real. So the fact that they don't really go into any interesting level design with things being moved around or messed around with is really disappointing. And it would have been cool to see like Ikora is afraid that she can't get in contact with the Traveler, or she's afraid to lose her friends or things like that. So seeing that physicalized in some way, like maybe you find Ikora just like alone in a big empty space, and maybe like the Witness is tricking her into thinking that she's the one who drove away or maybe even killed like all her allies, so nobody is around because she got rid of them, would be some sort of interesting thing. And like maybe to sort of physicalize those emotions as part of the level, like you fight characters that you recognize on your way to Ikora and try and convince her that this isn't real and this is just a trick. Or for Zavala, his thing is he's afraid of being useless or something, so maybe enemies he can't fight and things like that, and he's like messing with his memories and making him helpless to change them.
Before I lose a thought, you mentioned how we have no personal connection to the Witness. Our Guardian is supposed to have beef with him because it's because of us, or because he nabbed our ghost at the end of Lightfall. He's the whole reason. He made the link to the Veil and whatnot to open the Traveler portal. Like, we should have beef with him. I completely forgot about that until just now. We should have beef with him, but we don't. Like, it's completely non-personal. Uldren puts a bullet in Cade, and we have this whole one-liner and vendetta quest in Forsaken to go avenge Cade. But Witness uses our ghost to open the portal that nearly ends the universe, and
can you imagine how much more impact it would have been if the DLC started with your ghost dying, and then throughout the course of the DLC they gave you some excuse for the reason that you still have the light, but throughout the course of the DLC you are getting revenge for your ghost?
I would actually care at that point.
That would have been one hell of a beginner. I don't know what excuse they would have given, but like given the fact that we're inside the Traveler, like maybe, you know, the Traveler's giving us light temporarily or something like that. And obviously by the end of the DLC, you would have to get your ghost back. But like having your ghost murdered at the beginning, killing the Witness, and then getting him back would have had a lot more impact than you beat the Witness, your ghost dies, surprise, actually he's not dead because of course he's not, duh.
That would have been way more interesting than, hey, go do Red War again. Because that's kind of what this plot was, especially at the start. Instead of finding Cade, you find Crow. But otherwise, you have to go off, and you have to go find Ikora, and you have to go find Zavala, and you have to bring everybody back together so everybody could be a fire team again, and you could take down the big bad, which is pretty close to Red War, because that's what happened in Red War. Everybody loses the light, everybody gets separated and has a crisis of faith, and then you got to bring them all back together.
I had compared this to Red War because I was saying the Witness was a lot like Gaul in terms of how much he interacts with the player. But now that you frame it like that, I didn't realize how much of the campaign mirrors Red War's plot.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Destiny content ends up being we gotta run after somebody. Somebody's gone off on their own. I didn't play the season before Witch Queen, but the introductory mission was Saint 14 has run off, or Osiris has run off, and Saint 14 has run off after him. And then in Haunted, it's just like somebody's running off into the depths of the fucking Leviathan because there's a memory nightmare thing there luring him down in there. so much of this content, I mean, so many, hell, a lot of seasonal content and expansions are running off after characters who are doing something that they've gotten themselves into and can't get themselves out of. Curse of Osiris, you're running in to save Osiris. I guess kind of Warmind, you're running after Anna Bray. Forsaken, Cade runs off and gets himself killed. You can't save him. Then you got Shadowkeep, where Eris is run off into the pyramid thing, and then Beyond Light, Varix is, I guess, run off and hiding. We don't really care about him, but there's another character running off and hiding. Witch Queen is finally a break from that. Lightfall starts with Osiris running off to chase the Veil and Callus and Neptune and all that shit. Somebody's always running off and getting themselves lost, and we always have to pull their ass out of the fire. It's a bit of a tangent, but I mean, it's just another, we gotta save somebody and we gotta beat the big bad and save the day. But meanwhile, all the cutscenes and all this important plot development are around these characters that we're saving, but simultaneously we're not even recognized in these exchanges, in this dialogue. All our ghost dialogue, even our ghost, the one bond partner you're supposed to have for life as a guardian, is just talking to us and we never say anything back. This is a nitpick of mine, is we never have any sort of relationship with our ghost, because that's a whole ass theme of Destiny, is the relationship between a guardian and their ghost. I mean, Zavala and Tarj are a big thing here in the final shape, but there's a rift between them because Zavala's got his crisis of faith or whatever. But instead of, using that to reflect on our relationship between our guardian and ghost, it's just, hey, your ghost is still your voice and you're the guy who goes shoot stuff. I mean, even Glint's in this fucking DLC, pull pork, with Crow, and they literally talk about being a pair for bonded for life, but we're still just, I don't even know what we are with our ghost. He's like our voice, but we're the gun. That's the only real relationship comparison I could put there.
Yeah, we're the one they call when they need things done, because we don't have any player agency of our own, so we don't do things unless it needs to be done. Like, the only time we did that was Forsaken.
And then nobody else can lift a finger to do anything, because anytime they go and do anything, they need saving. So we got to pull their ass out of the fire. And then the cutscene happens and we're not in it.
Yeah, that was really disappointing how little we were in this, because at least in a lot of other campaigns, our Guardian is at least standing around doing things, but there were so many pre-rendered cutscenes in this where we just don't see our Guardian at all, because they're so wholly unimportant to the overall plot.
And we don't need all these pre-rendered cutscenes to tell a good story. Like, they're pretty, and I love a pre-rendered cutscene because, you get to see pretty cool shit. Like the opening scene with the Witness trying to final shape everybody. It's wholly unimpactful because, in the end we win and there's no everlasting consequences from it. But it's cool and it's pretty. And the Fever Dream when you enter the Traveler is cool, is pretty. All of them are pretty, but there's just no huge impact from them because I don't have a personal involvement in any of them, and they feel like it's a story happening separate to the game I'm playing. And that's what a lot of Destiny story feels like, is I'm the audience member rather than a player engaged in it, which I hate because this is a video game. I'm supposed to be playing the game, not watching a movie or a show. But instead, we're treated as the audience rather than a player.
It would have been interesting as well, getting more into the gameplay side of things. The structure of this campaign is very much like all the other Destiny campaigns, where basically all the bosses you fight up until the end are just enemy but large. And those have always been very uninteresting to me because most of the attacks and things are just, as long as you hide behind a wall, you're good, and the arenas are not very interesting. But with this one, it's a real shame that they didn't have more thematically interesting bosses, because I think, obviously for Crow, if we were going off of the physicalization of their emotions and personal hells, getting to Crow and having to fight Uldren with him would have been interesting. And in this instance, I wouldn't expect it to be just fighting a regular dude, but you could have it set up like the Witness fight at the end, where he's sort of centered in the arena and he has these big arena sweeping attacks and things like that you have to avoid. So that way, from a programming perspective, they don't have to give Uldren all that much enemy AI, because I know that's a lot to do, so because he'd mostly be in the center of the arena, and these attacks and things would be sort of unrelated to him, like he's manifesting them with magic. And thematically that would be interesting because you're helping Crow finally literally overcome himself. And then things like maybe Ikora is worried about like driving everyone away, maybe you have to fight Ikora to like calm her down, or right before Zavala wants to give himself to the darkness, maybe Tarj would help him, or maybe Tarj doesn't want to help him, so you have to kill Zavala first before before you can stop him from going in, and then he goes in anyways or something like that, Tarj would revive him afterwards because you wouldn't just leave him to be dead. For the final mission, it would have made a lot more sense to me if instead of doing this 12-person mission that obviously Bungie's engine was really struggling to function, they could have done just the typical 3-person thing, but had NPC characters that you recognize come in to help you through certain situations. So you get a bunch of cameos from everybody to see how everybody is helping out. Because as it stands, you get the cutscene right before the final mission of everybody kind of in the crowd, and then you never see them again.
Well, they're in that mission.
Are they?
Yeah. You just can't tell what's going on because...
Just because there's so much going on?
Yeah, I know. Mithrax is there. Savathun is even there. A bunch of Hive Guardians are there. Or Hive Light Bearers are there. Not Guardians.
Okay, I actually didn't notice that. That's partially me for not noticing, but also I think if it were 3 people and they had paced these out better, it would have been more obvious.
Yeah.
And you could have characters coming in and helping you out in some way, like their own little unique way.
It sucks that the 12-man mission really struggles to work because later on that mission had a Grandmaster version of it, which when I played it with my friends was really fun because you actually had roles that were more MMO like. You actually had tanks and healers that were committed to the part and weren't just like flavor, because a lot of those roles, and if you try to play into that in Destiny, you can't always get there. It's just like, yeah, you can kind of heal other people, but in the end you still got to shoot the bad guys, or you just still got to deal damage. You got to pump damage to everybody that's trying to kill you rather than trying to keep your teammates alive or trying to tank the damage so your teammates can kill them. And you could really play into those roles a lot more in Excision or in Grandmaster Excision, but it barely fucking works. And a lot of shit that the game usually has running whenever you're playing, it gets disabled. Like all the mods in your armor, their cooldowns are like doubled or something, and fragments cost. Some of them just straight up don't even work because it's struggling to get that to work. And then, and then the whole design of the mission wasn't really that engaging either. Like the Witness is a cool boss, but he was way cooler to fight in the raid than he was at the end of the mission because your side objectives in Excision are stand on plate, dunk the light, or dunk the moats, which you do every fucking goddamn season and expansion and every day in Destiny.
Can you imagine how much worse the final boss would have been if they had actual complex raid mechanics in a 12-person mission? That would have been awful. Like, I get it. I get why they did it the way they did. I just don't think they should have done it.
Oh, I mean, all the pieces for it are there. Because in the raid, what you do is you stand in the attacks of the smaller arms that pop in over the arena, and there are like colors on these armbands that they have, and you got to match these colors to symbols, and you get these symbols by standing in the attacks. I'm not going to explain the whole goddamn thing, but you need to get basically a buff to break his buttons before you deal damage, and it's a pretty fun encounter because it can get kind of hectic. But 12 people? Oh god, I think most missions would end up with everybody sitting there until somebody realizes that nobody's doing the damn mechanic, and they either start to do a mechanic because they want to get the mission done, or people who can do it just leave because they're not going to pick up the slack of 10 people who have no idea what's going on, even though it's not their fault that nothing's happening. If we're on gameplay, we should probably talk about the new faction.
Yeah, we should. Because I think I cut most of what our thoughts were about the faction from the actual video. Because the original runtime for the Final Shape video was like 35 minutes, but I wanted to cut that down. And a lot of that was we had conversations. Well, not a lot of it, but like there was like 2 or 3 minutes where we talked about how we thought about the new faction, and it mostly boils down to meh.
I mean, when it comes to enemy design, Tormentors are unironically the best enemy I think they've put in the game because they have unique behavior and they differ from here's your bad guy, here's their crit spot, they have a gun, they're gonna shoot you.
The problem was after they did that, they then did that 19 more times.
Yeah.
Because that's all they had to go on.
Subjugators are supposed to be like these very Rolk-like enemies, but they don't move like Rolk. Rolk was very arrogant, so he was slow-paced, and then his attacks would come quick, and his charge attack was telegraphed so that you could actually have a chance to dodge it. And then he had those big arena sweeping attacks with his beams, very similar to the Witness, but the Subjugators don't mimic any of that. They're very They move quick. They're very nimble, but then they'll stop on a dime and they'll shoot at you with a weapon that does a fuck ton of damage. And then sometimes they use stasis or strand, and they have a unique shield behavior. If they're depending on whether they wield stasis or strand, they have a stasis or strand shield everywhere except their face at all times. Otherwise, there's nothing really cool about them. Like the Fallen from Beyond Light did the same thing that the Stasis Subjugator does, and the only thing the Strand one does is anytime he gets mad, he'll throw these very slow tracking projectiles at you that will suspend you for a ridiculous amount of time. Like he doesn't sever you, he doesn't use Unravel, he doesn't use any of the verbs you have in the subclass, and otherwise he's just another big enemy with a big health bar. And beyond that, the rest of the Dread are Scions that instead of their Void Grenade move, they have a Stasis Grenade tied to them. Like the Strand Scions at least do something different, but the Stasis ones just throw a Duskfield nade. There's nothing really new there. And the Grim are kind of different in the way they flap around, but they move just like flying harpies. And I guess the Husk are actually somewhat neat. They are, I think, the most actual unique enemy of that faction, even if they don't feel like it. They have their whole chest is a weak spot, and if you break that weak spot, or if you kill them by shooting that weak spot, they won't pop out a worm. But all that worm does is seek you like a missile. It doesn't do anything unique. I get why it doesn't track to other enemies and create an overshield, because that would just be a moth or another backpack stand-in. But if they had multiple mechanics that they could do, sure, some could track you, some maybe could make an overshield, some could become a turret. Like the subjugators create a lot of little buddies for the enemies, but you can't do anything to prevent that. If they decide to do that, they'll just do it, and you can't shoot the buddies off the guy. The buddies don't go away when you kill the subjugator. But if these worms would maybe turn into these turrets for the enemies, or maybe they could buff them and change their attacks and basically change these enemies and from one kind of enemy to another that's actually different, rather than, oh, this one's stronger and it does deal more damage. I would think that would actually be pretty cool, but instead they do one thing. And a lot of times you don't even get anything unique with the worms there, because you kill the Husk, and if you kill it while it's right on top of you, basically all that is it's going to explode pretty much a second later, because they're right on top of you. You have no chance to shoot them. So all it boils down to is, oh, as soon as you see the enemy, kill them before they get close to you. Otherwise, they're just going to come and basically bomb you as soon as you kill them. And I don't remember if there's another enemy. If there is, they're that forgettable.
My problem with it is on a more in like the way that the player engages with the game, and this is a problem I have with all of the Destiny factions, is because of the way that the game is designed, you don't have any of the interesting enemy engagement that you had from Halo. And I bring up Halo because that's Bungie. Because in Halo, depending on what enemies were in what group of a fight, you could approach the fight differently, and depending on which enemies you were going to prioritize first, the fights could go a little bit differently, and depending on what weapons you had picked up, the fights would go differently. But with Destiny, you don't pick up weapons, you just have the weapons on you. So enemies need to be designed for any weapon archetype, basically. And the enemies are designed so that you're going to be fighting hundreds of them or thousands of them. And so they all sort of homogenize into the same thing. So it never feels interesting or unique to fight different enemy types, especially between factions, because every faction seems to have very similar enemy archetypes, because they need to fill similar roles in the same in the same combat. And that's what made this new faction so mediocre, is again, they just have enemies that fill these same archetypes. And when they throw in the other enemy factions also in the DLC, then it just compounds this problem of like everything feels very samey to fight, and none of the new abilities felt like it mixed up the combat in any meaningful way. And there's no easy way for them to fix it at this point because of the way that they've designed the core structure of the game's combat. And that's mostly just why I don't like Destiny in general. And I mean, especially after playing Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite's campaign, fighting the AI, they really got it right on how fun it is to fight, and how a small weapon sandbox has meaningful different weapons with different roles and approaching situations and the makeup of enemy groups and things like that Destiny can never have because of the way it's designed.
I don't I actually think Destiny's stuck in this spot because they can introduce new variants of the same kind of enemies from the same factions. They won't be as flushed out or unique as say something in Halo Infinite because well, that's stuck forever. You can't just change the enemy types and enemy units midway through because there's a ton of old content that's balanced around that as best as Bungie does balancing at least. That's balanced around those enemy units in these encounters. And if you change that, try to get rid of those, you're gonna fuck up a lot. But like you said, they all have the same archetypes because everybody's got a sniper unit, everybody's got a melee unit, except the Vex, but the Vex have two explodey units to make up for it, and the Cabal don't have an explodey unit, but they have flamethrowers, and that's basically it.
Yeah, so I don't know if I agree with you on that, honestly, because part of the important part of the reason why I don't think Destiny can do it is because of the weapon sandbox. And it's the fact that there's a bajillion weapons in Destiny and they have to basically balance it around different weapon type pools, and they have all the different things that you can roll on different weapons and things like that. So there's never going to be that interesting of an interaction between your weapon and an enemy. And they attempted to do that with like elemental affinity enemies, where using specific weapons with specific elements will do more damage to an enemy versus ones that don't. I don't think it was a very good system, but they at least attempted to try and make it so that you would be swapping weapons around to try and fight enemies, or putting on, there was the seasons when they had putting on like specific little mods to your weapons to be able to fight certain enemies, like the unbeatable champion, whatever, right?
Oh, and yeah, no, they still have that shit.
Okay, they still have that.
The champion system doesn't really work well.
And and this is honestly a problem with a lot of MMOs in general because there's so much content and so many different things that you can have that fighting the enemies just ends up as fighting fodder because they can't make any meaningful interactions between certain weapons and enemies, where a game that's more focused like Halo can. So I understand from a gameplay perspective how they've shot themselves in the foot, and I imagine people would not be happy if they had introduced like one new weapon this season where they started with like a really small sandbox and then like 10 years later they've added like 30 weapons total. Like, I understand that's not feasible from a design perspective. I just think that when you design a first person shooter, especially, getting that interaction between the weapons, the character, and the enemies is really important for what makes a fun gameplay loop in a shooter, and they don't hit that, and they can't hit that because of the way that it's designed.
I think they can start somewhere though. I know when D2 launched initially, not to track too far away from Final Shape, but the Cabal got a huge rework and they got a lot of cool stuff, but a lot of the cool stuff they got was also mimicked into these other factions. So when I thought the Dread, when they were announced and came in, I thought they would start actually trying to give them new shit. And then they kind of didn't, which was really disappointing. But a good starting point would just be more unique behaviors with these AI. Because if you take a look at any of the melee units in the game, they're just going to sit there until they can hit you. And at that point, they will just hit you. But none of the other AI react to that. They just sit there and they shoot their gun. It's very, very, very simple. They don't have any sort of tactics or strategy or way they move around specifically and how they combat you. They just wait for an opening to shoot you and they take the shot. They won't push you, they won't retreat, they take cover sometimes, but the one thing that the melee units in the Dread do is they actually have grenades that they'll toss at you, and these grenades are a pulse AoE effect that stay for a long while. They're specifically designed to push you out of spots where they can't reach you, and that's at least something. It's so minor and it's so little, but those little somethings can really go a long way the more of them you add. And if they just add more of those little things along the way, enemies will be gradually become more engaging to fight. They're never going to be anywhere near something like Halo Infinite, like you said, because there's just the impractical solution to balancing, or the impractical dilemma.
The reason I don't think that would work is, again, because of the weapons. Because when you have enemies that are designed like this, they would be really good in small clusters of enemies, right? Where like you've got enemies designed to flush you out, you've got enemies designed to push you, you've got enemies designed to protect other enemies, that sort of thing. Where if it were worked around a small sandbox of specific things, then they would know how much health they need to give these enemies. But the fact that you could be using any weapon is why these enemies end up either being a complete pushover or too spongy, where you have to dump a bunch of ammo into them and it just isn't engaging. And I think that's really the biggest issue on why it will never be engaging, is because it's impossible to balance around because of that.
Maybe, but until they try something, we won't know. And that's kind of on them to try something because it's just static.
I mean, to me, the only thing they could try is making it like Halo. And they're not going to do that because that's not feasible for an MMO.
I don't know. I just need to. I just want them to try something new and different because a lot of this same content revolves around a lot of fodder and then a lot of moats and a lot of ball throwing and a lot of carrying thing and putting it here. And I can forgive that if I just have more interesting enemy counters.
Even if we're not going to go with making unique bosses, because I understand the fact that a lot of the bosses are enemy but large because it takes a lot of resources to make unique boss fights. If they're going to go with enemy but large and they're going to put immunity phases, they desperately need more specific ways to get enemies out of their immunity phases. The fact that every boss that wasn't like there was one boss that didn't have an immunity phase, it gets extremely tiring. And they don't have to necessarily change it up. Like they can still have quote unquote immunity phases on these bosses, but flavoring it differently and making it feel like it's not just, oh, all right, here's the part where we have to go do something else because we can't fight the boss anymore, would really help with that and not make it feel so tiring to fight an enemy.
I would just prefer that if they're going to go immune, that they just don't have this arbitrary shield that generates around them. And it's like, oh, nope, nothing can break this except this one very specific thing that we've left in the arena for you. Like if there's going to be a part of their health bar where they're going to pull back and retreat to another room, do that instead of just a big fucking shield. Or just change up the combat encounter once they reach a threshold and give them some more. I don't want to give bosses more health. I don't like hitting a giant bullet sponge. I would much rather have smaller health pools where you have to focus your attacks. If you have a really big boss, I would rather hit weak spots on a boss than have a really big health bar boss that is just enemy but large.
Yeah, weak spots would be another, and again, this is just, I understand why they don't do it this way from a time and amount that they can do perspective. But if these bosses were designed in a way that made it feel more impactful when you got them down to certain phases, so like maybe you fight a boss where it's like the head is the weak spot, but you can like blow the rocket launchers off of its shoulders so it's not shooting rockets, and that will help make the fight a little bit easier. So you're making a decision on like which parts of the boss should we cripple, or maybe like you can cripple its legs so it's not moving around constantly, or something like that.
They could do that with Briggs. You remember the stupid mission where we had to defend Zavala's fake house?
Yeah.
You remember the big boss of that?
Mhm.
They could easily do that with the Brig because the Brig's got a missile launcher on its back. It's got a fucking cannon on its right arm, or it's over its right shoulder, and it's this huge mechanical enemy, and you can pop its front off. I call it its bra because basically you pop its bra off and its chest is exposed, and you can finally hit its weak point because otherwise it doesn't have an actual crit spot until it takes enough damage and it pops off. They could easily do something like that with that boss, and I don't remember exactly, but that entire enemy is based off a unique boss from a raid that actually got vaulted. Yeah, Scourge of the Past. And I thought you could break parts of Insurrection Prime off, or at least you broke parts of it off with the damage phases.
I think so. I don't remember.
I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem like an idea that's too far-fetched because ogres, for example, have an I-beam attack, and it's just like this I-beam attack is hugely fucking lethal, and they usually use it at range, but if they could only use it once maybe got them down to a certain amount of health, like Tormentors act when you break their shoulder crits, that would be way cooler.
And from a design perspective, this would be really annoying because you would have to make so many different, like, number one, you have to change the way that rigging the character works because of the way that is, and then you would have to change character behaviors based on what things are destroyed. But like from a enjoyment perspective, it would be super fun. Like, for example, the ogre, like maybe it starts off with that eye beam, right? Maybe you break its eye and then it speeds up, so it's starting to run around the arena and melee things because it can't use the eye beam anymore. So like you have that choice of like, all right, do we want to keep its eye beam because we can't deal with it stomping around the arena, or do we just want to focus on killing it and leave the eye beam so that we don't have to deal with that? And that's sort of automatically creating more engagement with the enemy because you're making these small decisions that impact how the fight goes. Or like the Vex robot with the shield that spins.
The Hydra?
Yeah. Like maybe you could defeat the Hydra's shield generator and then it would have some extra attacks or something that it doesn't do when the shield generator is up. So you just deal with the shield generator generator up and fight it how you do now, where you can't shoot through the shield, but you shoot around the shield kind of thing. Like, that's already immediately making the enemies more engaging. But I can imagine why they don't do that, because that takes a hell of a lot of effort and they only have so much time. But also, I don't care, because Bungie's a AAA company who's made more money than God. So when I ask for these things, I ask for it from this is a big company with a lot of money. These expectations are not out of the question because other games have done it. So, like, it would be nice. And it would also mean that fighting the same enemy over and over again would be less tedious because of these interactions and decisions that you make on how to fight them. Because you wouldn't have the same exact fight every single time if you made different decisions.
It's not like they design these enemies and they only use them for this one encounter. Pretty much anything that's been designed for this game has been used over and over again. Like, the only thing that was totally unique and came out of nowhere that I can remember were wyverns. I don't remember a basis for wyverns in like any piece of normal content until I think they came out with Beyond Light, but they came out in the year of Beyond Light for sure. But you don't see them in like an raid you don't see it as a boss in a raid prior. It is an actual unique enemy that was created. And then out of nowhere, they made a precursor variant of it, which is getting off topic, but it's not like they only created them once, to put in the reprised Vogue of, or Vogue of Glass.
The Vogue of Glass, the Vault of Glass of Glass.
They didn't just create it to put in Vogue and then they left it forever. Insurrection Prime became the Brig, and I think they probably built Boss Callus off the Callus bot from the Leviathan raid way back. And the bathers in the Leviathan raid are actually just gladiators, but they're big and they're ugly and they're naked. And then Galron is based off that bather, and he's a unique boss in Crown of Sorrow that got vaulted, but then he got put in a dungeon. These bosses aren't a lot of these enemies, usually tend to be reprised from pieces of actual interesting fun content, typically a raid, and then put in the base game, which I don't mind, but they don't ever build off that. They just put them in again and again and again without ever changing anything about them. And it just gets boring and tedious to fight no matter how they change up our abilities. Because as fun as Prismatic is, I didn't use it at all during our playthrough. I think it's finally time we probably talk about Prismatic, right?
I honestly forgot. Like, number one, Prismatic was a lot less interesting than they had advertised it, because they conveniently left out the part where it's not every ability that you can mix and match. It's only stuff they pick. And I was constantly frustrated because the Void Super, which was like one of the only ones I had access to throughout the campaign, because for the majority of the campaign, you only have access to like 3 supers.
You only have 2 until the end of the 5th mission, in which you get the 3rd.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So it was like I can't remember what.
Nova Bomb?
Yeah, it was Nova Bomb. I can't remember what the other one was, but it was like an area.
Shadebinder. Well, that's the class thing. I don't remember what it is, but it's the stupid Warlock Stasis Super.
Yeah, it was running around and doing things, and I hate roaming supers. But the worst part about the Void Bomb, what was...
Nova Bomb is the tracking?
Yeah, the tracking. There's a variant of the Nova Bomb that doesn't track, which is the one that I like to use. But they give you the tracking Nova Bomb, which is the worst one, because it constantly hits walls and things, because it tracks wrong.
Yeah, it tracks enemies through walls, which is bad, because then it doesn't chase them around the wall. And this thing goes slow for a reason.
The annoying part is the way that the homing functions, because it'll hone in on the enemy the closest way possible, where if they were to fix that from a programming perspective, they could have a little pathfinding algorithm for it and have the thing realize, like, oh, this enemy is behind a wall, this ball should then path itself around the wall, kind of thing. Then it would be really good, I think.
Yeah, it's not like this travels at 1,000,000 miles an hour and it's going to instantly reach its target. We call it the slow-mo bomb for a reason, because it's very slow and it tracks, but its tracking does not reflect its speed or its power. Like, the only way to make it more powerful is doing the stupid exotic class item thing, or doing the stupid exotic mission to get an exotic class item, but that's kind of different from what we're talking about. But otherwise, this base Nova Bomb isn't that strong in PvE. It's not even that strong in PvP, to be honest, because it's so slow, people can run away from it.
I did like being able to throw out a stasis turret and an arc buddy. If I consume my grenade to make an arc soul and I have a specific thing on, I will also drop a stasis turret, which will slow enemies, and the arc soul will attack them. And I remembered when I used Arc previously, this was a while ago, the Arc Soul wasn't very good, but it actually was very powerful in Final Shape and was actually shredding enemies, sometimes better than I was.
Yeah, that they had buffed it not so recently. I don't think it was during Lightfall. No, they might have. It might have been during the year of Lightfall. But this to sidetrack into why you'll hear a lot of Destiny fans tell you that you don't play Destiny and your opinion is not completely accurate because it's based off outdated information is Bungie's constantly balancing things and buffing things and nerfing things, and the sandbox can change so much in just a few months that playing it year to year, they almost see your playtime as irrelevant, which is wrong. It's just the sandbox has changed, or the weapon sandbox and the ability sandbox has changed. It's just a new meta. So things can always feel better from year to year, and things will also feel worse, but it does not invalidate Will's experience in the game. I feel like I have to say that at least once because 500 hours is a lot of time for any fucking game. Any fucking game. I have 5,000 hours.
Yeah, let me look up my exact hours is 579.
Yeah, I feel like I have to say this once because just because Will plays year to year does not mean he has any less of an important opinion on this game. It's still an important opinion because it actually differs from the typical, what's the word? The hive mind opinion. Because a lot of people turn their brain off when they play this game.
I think important's not the word I would use.
Well, I value new opinions is why I say important because a lot of people will dismiss it. And I'd like to hear actual non-homogenized, non-hive mind opinions, especially ones that are detailed and just well developed because it's criticism that sometimes you need to hear because it will let you think about a game that you even like in ways that you weren't typically thinking about it from people you do like or the people that do like it.
Yeah, and you can take that opinion and you can not agree with it, and that's fine. And I encourage people to like form their own opinions, and if you don't agree with it, that's fine. I don't expect you to agree with it, and I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I just want you to understand my opinion. And that's the most important thing for me is that you understand where I'm coming from so that you don't just dismiss it as, oh, I don't understand what I'm talking about, or oh, it's just drivel. Like, who cares?
I feel like it's also important to say that not every person who has a negative opinion should be listened to because some people hate just to hate.
And that's also the important reason that I make these real thoughts is to talk about my opinion so that you understand it and that I'm not just hating to hate, because a lot of people had that criticism of the Final Shape cast because they don't understand that this opinion is coming from a place that I've thought about, and I don't just hate Destiny because I hate Destiny, because I do hate Destiny, but I can tell you exactly every single reason why and why I like other games instead, and it's not just meh Destiny bleh. Like, we joke about that for sure, and we play it up. Like, obviously the video is exaggerated in a lot of places, but I don't ever just hate something to hate it. And there are things where like people will just blanketly hate something because it's relevant. Like any modern popular game, like Fortnite, I know is a big one where it's like people can't explain why they don't like Fortnite. They just don't like it because it's popular. And so those opinions to me are less relevant or important than opinions where people can actually explain why.
Another thing you bring up is you paid $50 for this damn DLC. This campaign better give you something that feels at least close to that, because that's almost as much as a new game.
Yeah.
I mean, you can buy more developed indie games sometimes for the price of these expansions, because they've upped this price. It used to be 40, now they're 50. And then if you want the deluxe editions, they're double that. And that's supposed to tide you over for a year. So whatever the hell you play in this DLC, or if you buy the deluxe, play over the course of a year, better be worth that price. And a lot of these campaigns, I don't expect them to fully deliver on that price, but they definitely should give you a good taste of it, or most of it, because that's probably where most of the budget went. These pre-rendered cutscenes are not fucking cheap and not fucking easy to pump out. And if they're making all these pre-rendered cutscenes and they're designing all these missions, having all these voice actors come in, having writers constantly develop these conversations, this dialogue, this story, I better get some good damn value out of this campaign, because otherwise playing one or two post-campaign missions and then playing a raid once isn't really going to tide me over. Sure, you can tell me that I'm expected to play the raid over and over and over again, but then it's got to be really damn good for me to play it over and over and over again. And that raid, I would say the raids are worth it, but playing everything else more than once, I don't want to. Like, I burned through the campaign and my other two characters really fucking quick. I did not give two shits about any of the talking, about any of the dialogue, because I didn't feel anything. I know a lot of people say they felt something, but to me, this was just I stand around while two people have a conversation that's irrelevant to what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is actually stopping the final shape. Meanwhile, everybody's trying to get over their personal melodrama and their crisis of faith and can't believe they're here and it's so pretty and oh my god and it's just like we're here to stop the big bad and anything y'all are doing is irrelevant to what I'm doing because I'm not involved in it. And I did not feel like I got a $50 experience or anywhere near a $50 experience out of that campaign. But then I go and play the raid and it's like, okay, this is hella fun.
And so much of the writing in the campaign is being talked at by NPCs. And I said that earlier about the difference between being talked to and talked at is it just feels like characters are dumping exposition on you in a way that's uninteresting. Because I fully believe there is much better, more engaging ways that they can present this information in a show not tell way. Especially, that's what I was talking about, the incorporating it into the level design somehow and having just make it weird. You're in the Traveler and the Witness is fucking with it. Make it weird. You can show how these people feel through like metaphorical physical manifestations of their emotions and their emotional state or whatever. And literally just by like the perception of certain things. Like maybe you go into everyone's little areas and the Witness looks different in every one of them because of how they feel about the Witness, or like maybe Zavala looks way different to Ikora than Zavala does regularly or something like that. Just that kind of thing. Just make it weird. And they had cutscenes where they try to make it weird, where there's just some random stuff going on that is supposed to seem sort of a metaphor of what's going on and things like that. And having that happen during actual gameplay would have been really interesting.
Yeah, they never capitalize on it.
I don't know if they have the potential to do this in their engine, but literally having like the level aesthetic randomly change around you and just like pops, where it's like, imagine you're walking through the grassland forest thing and it just like suddenly it pops to like white with the black goo everywhere, then it pops to a spacey theme, then it pops to a cloud theme, then it pops back to the regular grassy thing. Just like weird shit going on where you can see things are changing in real time.
They can do that. I know they can because they do that in the raid. In the fourth encounter of the raid, if anybody who's played it is paying attention, in the corners of your screen, you're in this all white room, very clean, very not minimalist, but it is a very clean, almost single color palette white room with very little color, with very little of anything else other than its own shadows. But in the corners of your screen, everything gets red, and then you can see the actual look of the room. It's very twisted, viney, plant, like I guess you can call it, but you see what the room actually looks like when you beat the encounter. All that white goes away and you get it for what it is. It's almost like a rotten out, hollowed out tree in there. And you see the room the way the room really is when you die too.
It's kind of neat.
So they can definitely do that. If the visuals of that room can change so fluidly while I'm playing in the middle of a 6-man encounter with all these back-end mechanics going on while ads are fucking trying to kill me, they can do that in a 3-person story.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
It was really cool. Another thing is that we have like no in-game cutscenes of us really doing anything ever, and there's never these like even little animation transitions. When you walk up on Crow, you just walk up onto him and he's just shush 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 shush. But he's not. You can be anywhere in that room. So based off what he's doing, you could be like right in front of him and he'll be telling you to shush like you're right behind him. Rather than the game just puts you in animation where you try to like touch his shoulder and grab him and be like, hey, what the fuck's wrong? No, instead your ghost just like, Crow, what's wrong? But he doesn't even pop out to ask any. And then you can fuck off in the middle of his conversation when Glint comes in and he tells you like, hey, and he's talking to Crow and telling him not to leave him behind. And they'll keep having the conversation like you're there in the room or you're not, because you're not there.
They do that with so many of the conversations where they expect you to just sit and take in the conversation, and you could just be doing anything. And a lot of the times we were just dancing while they were doing conversations. But it's like, if they just made it a very simple cutscene where your character just sits down with them and just listens to them, and they have a couple of camera angles going where it's like shot, reverse shot, maybe a little bit of panning, a little bit of rotating around to just make it seem more interesting than it is.
A little more immersion. What's wrong with a little more immersion?
Plus, you get more time to see your own character in a cutscene, and everybody loves that.
Yeah, I customized the shit out of it. I did not work on my drip so tirelessly just to not see me in there. I know Pimp Master Willie also wants to be shown
Yeah.
when he's in a goddamn conversation. Like if I had walked up to Ikora after that stupid mission, where she realizes or where she meets Cade and realizes he's alive, like all we needed to do is sit down and be like, there's somebody wants to meet you, or like there's somebody who gives a shit what we say. But like all we need to do is just say one line and sit and watch them interact. And there I'm okay with being a little bit of an audience member because this is a development between two characters with a personal relationship. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I would have preferred it if it was both Ikora and Zavala, so we don't have to see it twice. Because I mean, we get our reaction to Cade being back, and then we see Ikora, and then we see Zavala. But Ikora's is especially because I'm just sitting there and I'm dinging my coin like nothing's going on, and Ikora and Cade don't give a shit. We're not there. They're in their own little world.
I remember one of the things that they were talking about was now when you turn off your helmet, you can see your character talk in cutscenes and actually like have their mouth movements and everything versus just having your helmet on in cutscenes. So you can decide whether or not you want to see that. And it's not just specific cutscenes where they just have your helmet off no matter what. It's like you decide whether or not you want to see it. And you do that in what, 2 cutscenes maybe?
Two, exactly two. You go, Cade? And then you're begging the sky, the traveler, to bring your ghost back to life. Because, you know, you just saved its ass in the entire universe. God forbid the traveler not bring your ghost back. No, Cade's got to do it. Cade's got to sacrifice. I mean, it's an actual good way to do it. Because if you've seen I don't know if you saw it, but there was an original version prior to the delay that they had set up. It was bad. It was really bad. Cade didn't sacrifice himself to bring your ghost back to life. Instead, you just channeled light and dark, the 2 flavors of space magic, back into your ghost and revived it.
Yeah, I don't think that would have been good either. I don't think Cade sacrificing himself was all that impactful to me because I've seen plenty of other media where that is the sort of thing. Because it's like it goes character is killed off, then character comes back due to some mumbo jumbo, but through circumstances they either have to remain in some weird mumbo jumbo area and they can't come back with the main characters, or they then sacrifice themselves again to save the main characters so that they can't come back with the main characters. And so I knew from the get-go Cade was not coming back after the end of the DLC. They were going to bring him back and kill him again. And it was the same with Tarj, Zavala's ghost. It was like, wait, this character didn't have a voice before. Why does he suddenly have a voice now? Oh, is it because they're going to kill him off?
Oh god, dude. They never kill off any of the main cast ever. It's like they want to keep Destiny's main story as a comfort show for the audience, for the players. I say audience because that's how I feel all the time. But nobody important ever fucking dies. They killed Cade and everybody lost their shit. More because Cade was like the only actual character who exhibited any sort of emotion or was anything more than a 2-dimensional fucking cardboard cutout, even though he was just Nathan Fillion playing Nathan Fillion, really up until that point. But they killed Cade and everybody loses their shit. So everybody since that's died has been a character that's been introduced in that expansion or is completely irrelevant. I don't even think Sagira was killed in a cutscene. I think she was killed off screen in a lore book, and then it was told to us in a seasonal story.
And then there was the ship lady.
Who's the ship lady?
I don't know. All the Bungie writers gathered around and they were like, what's the most inconsequential character we can kill off? Oh yeah, the ship lady.
Oh, Amanda. And then they start trying to develop her lore after they kill her. And it's like, it's so fucking annoying. They only give her screen time when they want to kill her off. And it's not like the actress is going away because Courtney Taylor voices Keitel, another big character that's still alive and is definitely going to be around a long time in the story. So it seems like they only killed her off so they could lighten Courtney Taylor's workload and maybe pay her less money because she's a very popular voice actress.
And give Aldrin something to do, I guess. I mean, Crow, not Aldrin, but
Crow. I mean, we've had so many stories around Crow. Like between Witch Queen, 2 of the seasons focused with him in it. First, it was Risen or whatever, where you're fighting Savathun's forces outside of the DLC, and he's having this huge crisis of faith because the season before that, he was also a big heavy feature, and Savathun had given him Aldrin's memories. So now he's trying to discern his life between Aldrin's after he'd already done that for like 2 years as a Guardian because everybody was picking on him, thinking he was Aldrin when he was resurrected as Crow. Like people would just kill him because it's like it's Aldrin Sov, and they kill him, and turns out he's a Guardian, and he gets resurrected, and he's got to hide his face so he doesn't keep getting killed over and over again without him even knowing why he's getting killed. And then Haunted, he's trying to separate those two personalities, and then every season it feels like he's still struggling with that over and over and over again.
Even in Final Shape, they had images of Aldrin, like statues of Aldrin in the witness area when you find Crow for the first time. Because I remember specifically because I was making a joke about sucking Aldrin's dick.
It's just like they can't move him past this one fucking arc. He's been alive for years. They've had so much content focused on him, and he can't move past this arc. And his sister is in the same place. It's like, I used to be a total dick about everything, but now I'm cool because we have a universe-ending threat. And then Savathun is kind of haphazardly brought back. She's been dead for years. And then in one season, it's like, okay, she's got to get back because she's got to tell us how to actually get through the portal. And then you bring her back for one cutscene, and then it's kind of in limbo.
From what I understand, it's more complicated than her ghost just showing back up.
So the synopsis of the story is we need to bring her back because she's going to tell us how to get through the portal, which is you got to make him wish him on Kara. But so we go to her ghost and we're like, we need to bring her back. And her ghost is like, nah, she got this thing. You got to kill her sister. So we can't kill her sister straight up because you need to have a whole expansion about that. So we just kind of put it on the back end by banishing her sister from her throne world, meaning she can't die out in the real, or she dies in the real world. She dies for real, for real. Throne world is like her resurrection pool or what gives a shit. There's a bunch of shit that's irrelevant. Basically, in the end, she's like, okay, I'm alive now. Let's make a deal. You keep my ghost and I get to fuck off and do my own. So now we have her ghost and we can crush it anytime we want. But we won't because we're the good guys.
Okay.
Even though she's made it clear that she doesn't really care. She's got this whole storyline that develops after the campaign. She's trying to she's trying to get everybody to move away from gods. She's like literally sacrificing her own hive or something over and over again. So they figure out that they shouldn't rely on her and shouldn't trust her. She's very much throw your kid in the pool and let them figure out how to swim kind of thing. But she doesn't have any morals or ethics about how she does anything. So she's still a piece of shit, and we should definitely kill her and take her out while we can. But everybody's afraid that she'll have some scheme that we're not aware of come to rise suddenly, and without her around to tell us what the fuck to do, we're scared that we'll be lost in something. So we keep her ghost around so we can keep her around or something.
Sounds convoluted.
Yeah, I mean, you got to play Season of the Witch to understand, but that's vaulted now, so you can't. And even if you watch those cutscenes, there's a lot missing in between because there's a lot of dialogue that happens and explains everything, exposition, because that's what your favorite thing is. In between those cutscenes to explain what's going on. You can get the gist of it from it, but you got to go on Bungie's YouTube account and search for those cutscenes through like the 20 different versions that they have posted because they have posted in every language. And then from there, you have to play a post-campaign mission, and then you have to play another post-campaign mission, and then you have to do an exotic mission, and then you have to read a few lore tabs, and then you finally can get the gist of it, or then you can finally understand the whole bit or whole plot she's got going for her.
Sounds easy enough.
Yeah. In short, Savathun has a convoluted storyline outside of Witch Queen because Bungie has not been very consistent with how they tell character stories. And I think that's why a lot of characters get excluded from the final shape because they don't know how to bring them all in and tie them all in because they try to develop storylines outside of expansions through seasons, and then they develop them through lore tabs as well. And then they try to bring it all in with a witness here, but all that gets brought in is you see them for a few seconds in the final mission because we're all allies temporarily to kill the universe-ending threat, rather than have these differences of ours bubble up and try to break us apart along the way while we're trying to stop the universe-ending threat. Like, we put Savathun down, we put a bullet in her head at the end of Witch Queen, and then all of a sudden we're here asking her to help us. And she's a piece of shit. I would not be surprised if she gave us a lot of trouble and hassle along the way trying to kill the big bad.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes enough sense because they had set that up at the end of Witch Queen with her ghost getting away. Like, they had already foreshadowed the fact that she would be coming back in some capacity, so having her back it makes enough sense.
Yeah, but we don't utilize her at all during the campaign. We're just off trying to rally the Vanguard again, and saving everybody's ass and pulling them out of the fire again.
Yeah, having an army of hive for the end of the thing would have been really cool.
Yeah, and it's not like we've got the Awoken at our back, because the Awoken are this whole kingdom with all their own, or not their whole kingdom, but they've got their own forces. And it's not like we have a whole army of Guardians trying to, keep the world or the system from burning up in a giant hellscape. But in the end, there's only 3 people in the portal, and instead of bringing in or trying to bring in anybody else, we're just gonna do it all ourselves and guess, I guess. Because if it weren't for Zavala, everybody would be twiddling their thumbs and sitting around going, maybe the Traveler will tell us how to beat the Witness. Like, if he didn't run off and progress the plot, basically.
It is funny that the moment Zavala finally does something out of character because of how desperate he is, Ikora immediately becomes the Zavala of the group.
It's just like, no, that's my job. You're not supposed to do that. I don't particularly like Ikora as a character.
I don't think either of them were very interesting, and I've said this for years, but like Cade was the only interesting one because he was the one who would take risks, had dialogue that wasn't overly preachy and just talking at you. Like, it felt like we were friends with Cade and he was friends with us. And we did things, especially at the beginning of Forsaken. Like, the plot moving forwards at the beginning of Forsaken is all Cade and us together doing things in tandem, which we never do with Zavala and Ikora. It would have been so cool to help Zavala get to the darkness thing against Ikora's wishes and go through a level with him.
This sounds like it's going to go off track, but this is kind of related to the final shape. The other day on Reddit, we saw the post, somebody missing Red War, but it's ironic because everybody, when Red War came out, everybody hated it. They shit on it for its, like, what they call the Marvel tier dialogue. It's really quippy, really whatever, right? And nobody liked it. There was an actual story, but nobody liked that campaign. And then all of a sudden today, people are liking it. What's ironic in the Red War, more so in a strike than anything, I actually like the Ikora more, that, or at least her writing and her dialogue and her lines, because it's the one time where she's not trying to be this fucking Aristotle super wise master of the light, where she exhibits actual emotions beyond her typical guardian, we must remain calm in this time of tragedy, we must look to the Traveler to look for our way out, or whatever the fuck. She actually says something else. That's just really what I want. I don't mind a little quippiness or a little quirkiness alongside of the typical Ikora that we get, because nobody's this one-dimensional perfect being. Nobody is. Like, we have depth and we have other emotions other than what we typically exhibit or what we're known for exhibiting. Crow should be more than just this emo, regretful, shameful guardian trying to escape his past.
You do get a little bit more of Crow personality in one of the 2 mandatory missions after the end of the campaign, but before the final bit, where Cade is getting him to come out of his shell and make jokes and be a little less serious about everything that's going on. And it's fun, and it feels like they're friends. And it's like that. And then he gets a haircut. That's it.
Well, something important actually happens. I don't know if you cut it from the video, but he actually gives Crow his blessing to become the new Hunter Vanguard.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, which is why he got a haircut and then didn't wear his new outfit.
I think he did, actually.
In the final cutscene, he's not wearing a new outfit. He's wearing the same outfit.
Yeah, actually, he might be. I don't know. He probably is. I just don't remember it because it's just not that memorable. Like, that felt like the most important part of that story, ironically, because the rest of it is very homogenous to what other Destiny stories are. You walk into a room and typically the big bad is there, but you can't kill the big bad yet, so you've got to work your way up to killing the big bad. And at the end, you put him down, and there are no everlasting consequences or any of that.
Or whatever consequences. They set up the fact that there's a power vacuum now, so whatever consequences we're going to see over the course of 6 months to a year or more.
Yeah, that's what these episodes are. Ironically, it's tying up those loose ends Bungie forgets about. Like the Fanatic, the Fickrel, the leader of the Scorn and Forsaken campaign, he gets delegated to a strike boss after the campaign because his whole thing is resurrection somehow because of Magic Ahamkara wish. And the next episode is, I think, finally taking care of that. It's either the next or the third one, or the last one of the year. And then the third episode is the power vacuum in the hive, because we did something last year in Season of the Witch that fucked with Xivu, and now with Savathun trying to not be a god but still being Savathun. Something's going on and we've got to take care of that, and I'm sure none of it will come back around in an expansion, and they're forced to finally write something new rather than recurring issues.
Do you think Destiny is a good game, and do you recommend it?
I think Destiny can be a fun game. Objectively good? No. There are a lot of issues beyond what we talked about here in the final shape. There's a lot of bugs. There's always bugs in video games, but Destiny is constantly buggy and constantly breaking in ways you don't expect it to. So it's rare to get a consistent playing experience rather out of it. And then absurd amount of microtransactions. Like, I know a lot of games, this is a huge problem in a lot of AAA games, but if you want to do any of the fashion, you have to spend an absurd amount of money on store cosmetics, or you do the other thing, which the game requires of you, is to just sink your time in. In the 5,000 hours I've played Destiny, I could have probably put that same amount of time across a dozen different games and gotten a full complete experience out of that would have been equal to what I put into Destiny. Probably. I wouldn't ever know because I'm never going to spend that time play other games, because I do enjoy playing Destiny and I think it can be fun. It just objectively, I can't say that it is because it doesn't try hard enough, and players only have this certain level of satisfaction they need to hit in order to keep playing Destiny. And beyond that, they just don't express any more desire to see anything more come out of it. And I think that's what holds it back, is that players don't ask for more, or often they don't ask more of the right thing.
I think a lot of players don't realize that they can, because with a lot of other genres, it's like there's competition in what's going on. And so it's like, oh, this other game that's suddenly gotten really popular has really good mechanics. Let's put that into our game because that would be really nice. With Destiny,
grapple hooks.
there is nothing like Destiny. Destiny is the only one. Like, there are other MMOs, there are other online shooters, but if you want the Destiny experience, Destiny is all you have. So people are really diehard about it because there is nothing else. And so they don't know what could be better. And for a lot of people, they don't care, or they don't want it to change, because this is the experience they have and what they know, and everybody hates change no matter what it is.
This is a very consistent experience with Destiny, because there's always this new Destiny killer game. The most recent was First Descendant. Like, that game is a piece of shit even beyond what Destiny at its lowest can be. But there's always something like that trying to challenge Destiny. The closest that gets to it is Warframe, and some people like Warframe over Destiny, but it's nowhere near that level of lethality to Destiny's continued existence, I guess. This is a weird way to put it.
And they're so different too.
Yeah, that is true.
Like, even as much as they are action shooter MMORPG kind of things, they're so different from each other, and they offer very different experiences.
I mean, there was Outriders that drove itself into the ground. God, I don't. It's hard to remember all these looter shooters that try to beat Destiny out. But I mean, all the time it's just like, oh, there's this new Destiny killer. There's this new game. It's the Destiny killer. You hear it every 6 months. You hear it every year. But none of them ever kill Destiny, because no one can make a game as nearly as similar an experience that even gets slightly better than Destiny at its best.
I mean, it's the same reason that like Call of Duty will always be on top at this point, because they've cemented how much content they can put out and how deep they've gotten at this point, that the only way Call of Duty could ever be beaten at this point would be if they killed themselves, if they just stopped, because nothing can beat the output. And it's the same with Destiny. Like, Destiny's been going for 10 years now. People are not going to just switch to something else if it's mildly better than Destiny. It would have to blow Destiny out of the water, and that's impossible.
And it would probably have to do it over the course of years. Like, nothing could do that, never mind a few days, but like a few months. Like, you couldn't do that in a short amount of time, because people are still going to be loyal to this game that they've put years of their time into. And it's going to take so much to break away that loyalty, no matter how low Destiny gets. I mean, when Final Shape Showcase was premiered, everybody was like nearly at their lowest low, and the lowest they could go was, oh, I'm gonna buy the Final Shape, but that's it. Like, it's like saying, oh, tomorrow's my last smoke. That's what it sounded like. People will not break away from this game no matter how bad it gets. And we come today and we're apparently at the best Destiny's ever been. And a year ago we were at Lightfall, which is like, this is it. Bungie's officially killed themselves.
Yeah, I think people are overcorrecting because of Lightfall on like how good the Final Shape is. Not to say that other people's opinions are wrong and that they enjoy it. I imagine a lot of people do enjoy the Final Shape, especially after Lightfall. Personally, I don't think a lot of these emotional responses to how good the Final Shape is are all that objective.
Emotions rarely are.
And it it'll be interesting to see in 6 months down the line what everybody thinks about the final shape.
Because a lot of what comes from a Destiny expansion also comes from post game. But like I said earlier, I need to get a good taste of that in the actual campaign. But I am still obviously enjoying Destiny post campaign. It's just once I get through that, I get to playing what I actually wanted, which is build crafting with Prismatic. Obviously, I want to see more from it. A lot of Destiny players just want Prismatic to be the subclass where you can just mix and match everything. That's probably impossible from a technical standpoint because you'd have to rebalance the entire PvE sandbox around that. That's a little off topic, but what I enjoy out of the game, I'm getting out of the game right now. It's just the campaign was not that enjoyable. Like, I don't want to go through and replay those last 3 missions for my stupid Guardian rank with these extra side objectives added in there because there wasn't anything objectively fun about it. I would rather play the raid. I would rather do the exotic mission if I thought the reward was worth it because it's in half an hour for one reward of randomly rolled exotic with 8 different options in both its columns. So it's a huge game of RNG, and I kind of like fighting the Dread, but only some of them, mostly the Husk and the Strand Scions, and sometimes, and still every once in a while, Tormentors, because, like I said, Tormentors are the most actual unique enemy they've ever made. It's just that when they're bosses, they tend to be, that uniqueness tends to get doled out by just general boss behavior of being too spongy and whatnot.
I don't even think we got from you. Do you recommend Destiny to other people?
No, not really. I mean, it's all right if you feel like you have a lot of time on your hands and you don't mind doing some more dull, monotonous things for those bigger highs. You can definitely get more highs out of Destiny than lows, but you have to like the game and you have to play it. It says free to play, it's free to try, but a lot of what you'll like out of Destiny doesn't come from what's free to play. And that's why I don't recommend you spend money on it. Like, I recommend you give it a try, but that is at its absolute cheapest. You're going to have to spend money on a game to actually really enjoy it. Like, you're never going to really know if you love a game from a demo. But there's so much to purchase for Destiny to get what is really good about it out of it. And unless you can get that for really cheap, I would not recommend it because there's just so much content. Like, I would not tell somebody to buy the Forsaken Pack, Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, Witch Queen, Lightfall, and now the Final Shape, because outside of a sale, that's, oh god, I don't even want to know. Oh, not to mention they got really scummy with a few other things like dungeon keys. Like, it's $20 for 2 dungeons. Dungeons are like mini raids. One is not worth $10. 2 not worth $10, I would not say. And they priced the 2 dungeons at $20. Like, yeah, all the DLC right now outside of sale it'd be $120. The price of 2 games. I don't think all of Destiny is even worth $100. Yeah, no, I don't even think it's worth $100. Maybe I'd put it up to 80 or 90, maybe on a good day where I really like Destiny, but it's too much money for what it is, I think.
The first pop-up I got for beating the campaign on Legendary was, congratulations, you've unlocked special items that you can buy on our website.
Yeah.
That just shows Bungie's monetization scheme. It's just like, oh my god.
What's ridiculous about that is the Bungie, that store, it's not officially Bungie. It's like their stuff being licensed out to a third party, and that third party is absolutely god-awful. There are horror stories that come out of that. People buy raid jackets and they get the wrong raid jacket all the time. Sometimes they don't even get their shit. Sometimes they get their shit and it's damaged beyond all repair and they won't get comp from it from anybody. Sometimes their shit doesn't show up at all and they don't get refunded for it. And this happens to so many people all the time. And Bungie doesn't do anything about it. They don't care. It's not like they can't switch to a different distributor or whatever the fuck the word is. They can't switch to somebody else to sell their merch. But they know how shitty people's experiences with it is, and then they will continue to promote that in game. Like, you will get as many pop-ups for content and what's next week in Destiny as you will with, hey, you just did this, go buy our extra merch for it, go buy this pin, go buy this jacket, go buy this plushie. Like, what the fuck?
Give us your money. Give us your money. No, Bungie, I just spent $50. Give us your money.
Give us more money. And it's like, god damn it. Like, I'm giving you more money than I should. I should be giving you 0 for how you treat me sometimes. And then people want to get in the whole argument between executives and the devs. And it's like, yes, I get those are 2 different peoples, but there is one company making this game. And if I try to treat the people within that company differently, my criticisms are never going to get this. I'm not going to dox anybody, but if I'm going to talk shit about a game, it's so this game could potentially get better. I don't see Destiny getting better if if I try to go easy on Bungie because the devs work hard and they actually like the game.
And it's not like you're calling out the devs for being lazy or anything like that, because it's never about developer laziness. It's about fucking Pete Parsons and the decisions he makes.
Pete Parsons, baby!
We have a name that we can say fuck you to, and it ain't any of the devs, it's Pete fucking Parsons.
That fucker needs to hop on a train to bumfuck nowhere and fuck off. Destiny was so bad last year, or we almost welcome in Sony to taking over the company, which is obviously not a good idea, but that's how bad Lightfall was. And here we are on the rebound, and all of a sudden we've forgotten all about that.
At least with how bad Halo Infinite has been, all the content's been free. You get your stupid monetization store and everything, and it's still real bad, but at least all the content's free.
Yeah.
I say extremely tired, and I wish Halo Infinite was better. But Halo Infinite is my little baby that I can barely recommend to other people. I think at this point, Halo Infinite's definitely easy to recommend to people because there's enough content in it. But like, man, is it so jank?
I mean, you can play Halo Infinite, you can download Halo Infinite's multiplayer without buying any extra expansions, which already makes it better over Destiny. Now, it depends what you actually like. Do you want a sandbox multiplayer game, or do you want a sandbox MMO?
Yeah, they're two entirely different games. And the only reason I'm comparing them is just because they're both a shit show.
And Bungie is responsible for both of them.
Yeah, definitely. It's Bungie's fault Halo Infinite is the way it is.
Hey, look, they made Halo for the first 10 years, okay?
It's so funny to me. It's so funny to me when people are like, we want Bungie back for Halo. No, you don't. You do not. Have you seen Destiny? You don't want Bungie back. Bungie is just as bad, if not far worse, than 343. 343 is at least doing the minimum of what they're allowed to do to appease the fan base. Obviously, there's still all the big wigs at the company that are like, we gotta make money, we gotta charge people out the ass for all this bullshit. You're not going to be able to get anything done because of office politics and the amount of resources we're giving you. But like they've changed things to player feedback as much as they could, even though we really want color customization beyond the set ones that we can do. But obviously there's some bigwig that's like, you're not allowed to change that. And it's like, you can tell there's passion from the devs in Halo Infinite, and you can tell there's passion from the devs for Destiny. But capitalism has ruined these games.
There is a lot of updates going into Final Shape, where a lot of longtime community wanted updates, changing your Guardian's appearance, bringing back a lot of old guns that people missed, and designing game modes that people have wanted, like Onslaught from Into the Light. We finally got that. A lot of that we got from in the months leading up to Final Shape, which I liked, and I wanted to see more of that in the Final Shape. And obviously, you can't change some of that so late into the development process. And I want to see more of that coming out of the Final Shape, but I also want to see a lot of bigger changes come out of the Final Shape, because I enjoy playing Destiny. I don't know how much longer I will enjoy it if it continues to be so the same. We get a lot of the same mechanics in these gameplay encounters. I want to tangent into this real quick. I know this isn't exactly fluid, but it's always, like I said, dunking moats, throwing balls, standing on a plate. I want to see different gameplay mechanics in these missions, in these encounters. I don't want to do the same thing I've been doing for years and years in everything other than a raid. I mean, even in the raid, you get plates, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, I'm tired of plates. There's no way Bungie hasn't thought of something else to do other than plates, balls, and moats.
I mean, honestly, it's probably the corporate shit again, right? Like, it's why put the effort into making new stuff when we can just reuse the old stuff again and again and again.
There's a lot more I can talk about, because I want, when we're talking about enemies, there are different enemy behaviors that I want that are unique to some of these factions, or that would be unique to the factions that we see. Because I want the Cabal to behave more like Space Rhinos and more like Brutes out of Halo, because they're balanced out with Scions, and then they have units that are still Cabal but don't behave anything like Brutes, because they have, say, take a Colossus, which is Callus's first phase. They always have the same like arc missile slow move field shit on their back, but it's like for years and years and years, that's all they've ever done. And it's like, are you telling me they've shot these same missiles for years and years and years without changing anything up? Like, they can't just change into a mortar backpack real quick, or maybe just lob grenades out of them real quick, or maybe instead of just having a missile backpack, they have something that's more support oriented to their own units, like drop a shield generator that they can sit inside of real quick. There's a lot of little things I'd like to see that are different, that would be developed developed on and the enemies for Destiny. I know this is totally out of place from where we discussed it, but as I said, I can just keep going on and on and on and on and on about what else I want.
We're talking about what we want out of Destiny and what more things. And then the poor little Tiger engine is like in the corner of the room, like getting whipped and is like, please stop, let me die.
I think we can end on this is an interesting discussion, is the future of Destiny, because everybody wants what's getting pumped out of Destiny, and then a lot of times when Destiny starts failing, they want a third. So we can move on from the same poor problems that plague Destiny over and over again because of engine limitations or programming or whatever limitations they've set for themselves by building off of whatever the hell that's been constrained by for the past 10 years while making Destiny.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen until Destiny stops making profit.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, there's your answer, folks. Never mind.
No, I mean, like, that's why I think that's why Destiny 1 went to Destiny 2, or maybe they just literally couldn't add more to it and it was too chock full, so they had to upgrade the engine. But then Destiny 2, they can still add more stuff and they keep adding more stuff and they're making lots of money, so there's no reason to make a third. Obviously, making a third would include all of these improvements that everybody wants, including, I'm sure, the developers. I can't imagine how it is dealing with a 10-year-old engine at this point. That's, I mean, even older than that, because the Destiny engine is an offshoot of the Halo 3 ODST engine. So like the Destiny engine is decades old, but like I'm sure it's been rebuilt so many times that like it's unrecognizable from then. But like from a company perspective, there's no reason to make another one until they literally can't use this or they stop making money and they need to.
With Destiny 1 to 2, I know they were required by Activision to continue making separate titles. If it were up to Bungie, they said this themselves, that they would have continued to build Destiny off of the first one. They would have done basically what they've done with 2 and done it with 1. And then if they had stayed with Activision, they would have made a D3 after, I think, Forsaken, which it would be very different and very interesting from what we have now. But I don't even imagine what that would be like. It probably wouldn't be a game I'd be playing anymore.
I don't think I need to say whether or not I think Destiny is a good game and whether I would recommend it. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but the answer is no and no.
Obviously, you don't like it. I wouldn't call you a Destiny hater because I have heard what you've liked about Destiny. You've given some serious answers because obviously you like the gunplay feels good and you've complimented that and you've complimented the movement.
I can't remember if I've talked about this in a video or not, but my 3 pillars for a good FPS are good player movement, good shooting, and fun enemies to kill. And Destiny nails movement and shooting. It feels really good. The animations are really nice. Moving around is very fluid. Warlock jumping can be really annoying, but it still feels fluid. Throwing grenades and things feels satisfying when you get to do it. But man, is fighting the enemies really unfun. It's not satisfying at all. They're fodder or sponges, and that's where it completely falls apart for me. And everything extrapolated around that I just do not like. I don't like inventory management with loot. I don't like the way that that's all balanced and having to constantly adjust my light level with new loot that's better and having to like readjust my look because every time I add new gear I have to change my look again. And now they've got ornaments and stuff, but you still have to like change it, and it's like, oh my god, it's such a huge pain in the ass.
Complex mod systems, your whole subclasses has 4 fragments along with 2 aspects and how many fragments those aspects grant you along with it. And then you have the interactions with your exotics, both your weapon and your exotic armor piece. Then you have all these hidden numbers because there is an incredible amount of numbers beyond or behind everything that you're doing. Like there are damage buffs, but that aren't, there are standard buffs in the game that are consistent, but then there are damage buffs unique to a lot of these armors and then the weapons that they grant, but they don't tell you how much this damage buff is. And they don't tell you how much a lot of this damage does, or how much damage a certain ability or attack does. And then you have no idea for it, even if you consistently play, because they're constantly upping the light level, which is inflating all the numbers and all the damage numbers that you do. So we're used to do like 70 to 80 damage with a hand cannon shot. Now you do 17,000 and you have zero fucking clue as to how much fucking damage you just did in relation to how much a rocket launcher does, because you're working with 5-6 digit numbers, and that's not easy math to do in your head for most anybody outside of, and you have to use a calculator for that, and nobody wants to fucking do that when they play a video game
except for EVE Online players.
Fuck light level. Excel spreadsheets. Oh, I bite my lips so hard I start to bleed.
there's tons we can talk about Destiny, and I've talked about Destiny before, so I'm sure even some of the information I've said here is already repeating what I've said. But like, I just wanted to get my opinion out there so people can understand it. You don't have to agree with it. I absolutely don't expect a lot of Destiny fans to agree with it. I just want you to know it and understand that I don't just hate Destiny to hate it. I hate Destiny because of the way it is and wish it was different.
I just wish there was a better game that would replace it for me, because I would be on that in a heartbeat. But until then,
What about Marathon?
do you want to jump in a trash can and close that trash can lid forever? Max, swear.
Is it cozy?
No. It's occupied by a family of rabid raccoons with knives.
That's just a bonus.
They're looking to eat you.
Perfect. No more rent payments.
Until there's a true Destiny killer, if you want a Destiny experience, you gotta play Destiny. And
yeah,
I know it's bad at parts. It's definitely bad at parts, but as rational as I can be, there is enough that keeps me going that I enjoy about the game. That isn't me just tricking myself into a constant addiction feedback loop or positive feedback loop. There is enough that I would say yes, I can play it and enjoy it. But if something better comes out, I'm immediately hopping on that, and I'm going to change my tune about Destiny so quick. I'm just waiting to hate. I'm waiting to hate.
Ride that wave.
Oh God, I'm coming down.
Scoob didn't know that was a reference to Futurama, so when I sent that to him, he enjoyed that.
I have to watch. I actually have to sit through and watch every episode of Futurama now, because
Futurama's
there's
so fucking good.
I know there's so much good shit out of that show, and I've never watched it.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna fucking. Well, okay, I'm not.
Start it right now while we're recording.
Right now.
Boot it up. We'll get this demonetized.
So quick. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah. Hulu.
Yeah. Go watch Futurama instead of playing Destiny 2. That's how we should end this.
Yeah. That's a better recommendation. That's a better way to waste your time. And if you've already watched Futurama, well,
watch it again.
There's always 37 seasons of The Simpsons.
Oh, God. Goodbye, recording.
I never know how to end these. Yeah, goodbye. Goodbye, viewer. You specifically, Tom. But if you did make it to the end of this, I mean, we're at the 2-hour mark. I have no idea how long this is going to be when we cut it down. When I cut it down. I know you're an editor for me, but like...
You'll probably have to cut it down, because I'm going to get like too picky with what I want to keep in and whatnot, because I'm way too mixed. Or as opinionated as we are about this game, mine is very finicky.
Scoob loves to hear the sound of his own voice.
Oh, I do. I
The very first video he edited with him in it, I was like, Scoob, 50% of this video is just you.
Okay, it wasn't 50%. It was more like 33.
It was a lot.
It was a lot more than it should have been, but that it wasn't just because I'm egotistical. It's because I usually edit up until my point. I only edited my own content that was largely focused around me and doing what I was doing. But I also love the sound of my own voice, and I am egotistical as fuck.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that's why we're here, right?
It's all about me.
Yeah, listen to my voice for 2 hours about Destiny. You want to listen to me, a guy who doesn't like Destiny, for 2 fucking hours about Destiny, right?
Yeah, Bungie, don't you want to listen to us? Chris Proctor, if you're listening to this, take note. No, I'm kidding. He's like one of the coolest guys.
Hey, Pete, fuck you.
Yeah, Pete.
You watching right now, Pete?
Scooby B Stackin says, fuck you, Pete Parshits. Bungie numbers are 0169, motherfucker. Do something. Scooby space, capital B with a period, space, snackin, hashtag 0169.
Send him friend requests.
Yeah, send me a friend request, Pete. We'll play Destiny sometimes, and I'll give you the true LSE experience. I'll be totally racist and bigoted the whole time while demeaning you and putting you down for not knowing things that you don't know. That's true LFG experience right there. No other better way to play Destiny.